Well, I came up with the idea 3 or 4 years ago that I would like to have a bagpipe maker reproduce um, some of the vintage pipes that I carry. And In particular, I was interested in having the McDougall line reproduced because I've come across so many brilliant sets of McDougall pipes and also Glen pipes. Most people think of David Glen, but one of the best sets of pipes I ever had was a set of J&R Glen. J&R were John and Robert were cousins of David. So I started out with a J&R Glen reproduction and then moved on to two sets of McDougalls from different eras. And all three pipes are produced by different current pipe makers. Um, Partly, I just like the idea, partly because it was kind of a new idea. And reproducing a vintage instrument is actually quite a time consuming and can be a costly enterprise. And I wanted to create more than one replica, and I thought that would be a pretty onerous task for one pipe maker. So I started with one replica, the J&R replica, and then when I found the McDougall sets I wanted, I thought it would be probably expedient and more efficient and more interesting from my point of view to move on to other makers. So each set is made by a different maker. Actually, all three sets that I'm having made are made out of blackwood. The two original McDougalls are made out of ebony, and most makers today won't make pipes out of ebony. It's very volatile wood. It cracks easily. It's not easy to work with. Instrument grade cocos wood is not available anymore. So none of those two woods was an option. So we're making all three sets out of blackwood. I'm actually purchasing blackwood for two of my makers, and one of them we're actually using a stash of blackwood we got that was aged for 10 years, so I know the quality of that wood. And the third maker gets his own wood, and I've always thought that they were one of the best makers on the planet with some of the best wood. So that's one of the reasons I chose that maker. Yeah, I think it's a complimentary offering. What I get a lot of people who go onto my vintage page just to look at the pipes, and I get a lot of emails from folk who say, "Man, I love going onto your page and looking at your vintage pipes." They call it bagpiper porn, um, and they say, "I'd love to be able to afford one of these sets, but I can't do it." So part of the idea, I realized there would be a market if I could produce a replica instrument that looked like the originals and sounded as close as we could make it to the originals, but could be a quarter of the price. So the reproductions are much more affordable than the original vintage instruments are. Yeah, that's the unknown quantity, really. I'm not exactly sure what the market will bear. I mean, there are a lot of pipe makers right now, and a couple of very popular pipe makers. I can say that the three pipe makers I'm working with were more than willing to go into this enterprise with me. In fact, one of them actually approached me as opposed to me approaching them. So I think they're looking for something different and something that will distinguish them in the market. There have been lots of pipe makers over the years who have produced sort of their own pipes using vintage bores, but for some reason, I'm not sure why, very few, hardly any companies have said we're going to produce a replica or a reproduction of the old instruments. So I'm doing it because old pipes have always interested me. The more I get into them, the more they interest me. And I just like the idea of producing a line of replica pipes. So that's the way I've always approached my business, doing what I want to do and doing what interests me, doing the best job I can at it. And if I do that, I find a market, it seems.